All right, we're continuing our top lists of people in the lore for how strong they would be for legendary lords, and we are on to the demons of chaos, like any demonic chaosy lord, not literally from the demons of chaos roster. That would be just Be'lakor. But yeah, we did some Warriors of Chaos earlier. Did more of the Mortal Champions of Chaos. Now we're on to their demonic counterparts. And first, for Nurgle, there are 10 characters. He is 10th. Epidemius is by far the weakest demonic lord. By far. His whole shtick is he just rides around and marks down how plagues are going for Nurgle. Generally commands troops, generally pushes forces forwards in the end times, just kind of... He's a bureaucrat. He would lose in a duel to any of the demonic lords. He would lose. It would be actually kind of close with number 9, depending, but I still think he would lose to number 9. Epidemius in a 1v1 fight would be abysmally bad. And even as a support lord, quote unquote, he's not that supportive in the lore. He just wanders around and does stuff. He doesn't even like cast that many abilities to help his troops. He's just kind of there, noting things down. Epidemius is pretty pathetically weak. Wouldn't stand much of a chance versus anybody. Number 10. Number 9 is the Changeling. The Changeling can transform forms, but he doesn't actually get that much power from doing it. Like if he, in this game, he can transform into Skarbrand, but he doesn't actually have all the powers of Skarbrand. He just kind of looks like him, and he can kind of move like him and stuff, but it's not actually like, I turn into Skarbrand and I instantly kill anybody. So... yeah, the Changeling, number 9 on this list, is much more of an agent of chaos, is much more of a spy and a sleuth and a saboteur than a true duelist. Dueling with anyone besides Epidemius, I think he would have a terrible time. So, yeah. The Changeling is more Tzeentchian, just kind of likes to mess with people than actually kill them in a straight-up fight. Number 8 is Sartorial. We're flying through this list because so far there hasn't been anybody who is a good combatant, and Sartorial is just that. He is a messenger for Tzeentch and the Chaos Gods. He is not much of a combatant. He's just sent out to talk to various Everchosens and discuss things. He is a herald. He is a Lord of Change, so he's as scary as any Lord of Change is. But above this, he'll beat the Changeling handedly, for sure. He'll beat Epidemius handedly, for sure. But anyone above him on this list, there's going to be a big gap between him and the next one. Number 7 would absolutely body Sartorial in a fight. So, yeah, this is the last of the communicators or the reporters or the bureaucrats or the saboteurs. We're about to get into the real fighters, and Sartorial is just not that. So he is the best of the worst of the demonic lords. Next up, we have Azazel at number 7. Azazel was apparently an Empire man at one point, and he knew Karl Franz in some capacity because he duels with Franz in the end times and implies he knows who he is, as a different demonic lord is currently throwing balls at him, so we're just gonna have to deal with that. They're on sandbox mode. That doesn't stop Kugath from throwing artillery. Anyway, Azazel, crazy fast duelist. Ooh, that was a big explosion right in my face. Crazy fast duelist, has snake tails that can bite at people and poison them mid-fight. His demon blade is very spooky and scary with good armor piercing, and he is insanely fast since he is a demon of Slaanesh. He's just powerful. He's strong. He's an okay caster. He does get beaten by Karl Franz pretty handedly when Karl Franz is the incarnate and gets Ghal Maraz back and stuff. So it's a little tough to put him higher on this list. I can't see him beating anybody else on this list, but he was one of Archaon's little generals and helped out there. Though everybody else was also kind of poo-pooing Azazel, which lowered my standing of him in my mind. Number 6 is Kairos Fateweaver, and he is the lowest of the greater demons. The, paragon of Tzeentchian might, and, the first legendary lord to come out for Warhammer 3 for Tzeentch. He's going to be number 6 on this list. Kairos is not that scary in melee in the end times. He, during the first siege on Middenheim, some of the human characters withstood assaults from him and even pushed him back. I think Vultan did a little bit of pushing back against him. And he dies off screen to Archaon. And in various other stories, Kairos shows up to just mess with people. His little two-headed, I can see the future, but I can see the past, but I can never see the present sort of thing is just something that the Warhammer universe uses him a lot for. So he's around in other stories, but he himself is never that great of a combatant. Even when forced into melee, he's not seen being that spooky. I think he just barely beats out Azazel because of his spellcasting prowess, and Azazel's also not the strongest in my mind. So Kairos generally would want to avoid a melee, but his complete mastery of the Lords of Tzeentch should get him a win versus Azazel, though it is very close in my opinion. Similar to the Changelings, similar to Zarthoriel, a lot of Tzeentch's minions aren't meant for direct fighting. They're more of meant for fucking around and messing with people's days. Now back to full combat lords, we have the Skulltaker. A little underwhelming in Total War Warhammer 3, but Skulltaker in lore is apparently insane. In life, he was a marauding Chaos champion who never lost a fight, similar to Arbol. And then Khorne favored him so much for how many champions the Skulltaker defeated and how many skulls he dedicated to Khorne that he gave him a demonic body and let him roam the earth forever, claiming the skulls of various champions. So all those skulls adorning his cloak aren't randoms. He only takes the skulls from like major champions of other factions. And I mean, he has a whole cloak of them. He has so many that Khorne has like given him unlimited favor. So he's killed a crazy amount of champions and has never lost. Similar story to Arbol, the Undefeated. And while I ranked Arbol quite high on the Warriors of Chaos list, I rank the Skulltaker similarly. Just constantly fighting and beating other champions of other gods is a pretty big win in my book. And the Skulltaker is an insane duelist. He has his little Juggernaut mount to keep him moving and get a little bit of oomph in there. But I think he could take Kairos and Azazel quite handedly. And he would lose to anybody above him on this list, which if you're paying attention are only greater demons. Number 4 on our list for the Demonic Lord's power level is going to be N'Kari. The Paragon of Slaanesh, the greatest greater demon that there is for the Lord of Excess and Pleasure. N'Kari mostly fights with the High Elves, really likes to hunt down Elven souls, does a little bit of interaction with the Dark Elves, but is frequently seen fighting Tyrion and Teclis on the northern shores of Ulthuan. The main problem is N'Kari keeps losing, and while number 4 on this list, I think 3 through 1 are handedly better than N'Kari. In fact, number 2 on this list beat N'Kari in the lore, like in a 1v1 fight, so yeah, pretty hard to put them higher, but N'Kari is definitely better than Skulltaker and Kairos. Incredibly fast, 4 arms with 2 armor-piercing claws to be a nuisance, and some decent spells. And a little bit of that Paragon of Rapture or whatever, whenever they get nearby, you kind of get distracted. Though I think when you're dealing with legendary demons, they're not going to be like pretty and get distracted. They're probably immune to that sort of thing. So N'Kari comes in at number 4. Number 3 on this list will be Ku'gath Plaguefather. Ku'gath in pure martial skill is actually lower than N'Kari. N'Kari is significantly faster and hits harder than Ku'gath does. But Ku'gath has the benefit of being a much better spellcaster and a Lord of Plague. Plus, his Palanquin actually gives him a lot of tankiness. Like, I think it's blessed with some things that give him more vitality. And his horrible regeneration. King Lewin beats him in the end times with the help of a Shellian Priestess, but it's only because holy water is thrown at him that stops his wounds from instantly healing and burns him significantly. That allows Lewin to get up there and plunge his magical sword into Ku'gath's heart and officially demonic instability crumble him. But it took the one of the best lords of mankind, buffed up by multiple gods like the Lady of the Lake, and he has a magical blade, and he still needed a Shellian Priestess to throw a different god's holy water at Ku'gath to take him down. Ku'gath's very powerful and scary. I think he could take N'Kari. And then his extra abilities as a spellcaster just push him further up. And N'Kari, you know, can cast spells, but Ku'gath is more known for that. So, Ku'gath is spookier and better and tankier. And he's disgusting. Number 2 on our list will be Skarbrand the Exiled. In the lore, Skarbrand did defeat N'Kari at one of their scraps, so that puts him above N'Kari by default. I mean, he literally won in the lore. Skarbrand appears in some stories. He is very scary, and in some of his own lore, he defeats a lot of people, beats entire armies almost by himself. When you get near him, you get sent into a blood frenzy where you just start murdering your own friends. Or Khorne. Even if you're a dwarf, like, there's a Skaven omnibus where Thank will accidentally summon Skarbrand, and Skarbrand gets all the dwarves in Skaven to start killing themselves. So, even if you're supposedly resistant to the Chaos Gods like the dwarves are, Skarbrand can still affect you. So that's pretty good. He would cause a lot of army, you know, incohesion and whatnot. But, like, I have a pretty big asterisk here. Because, like, I wanted to rate him lower. Honestly, I had Skarbrand at, like, 5th. But then I was like, well, Skulltaker's not as good as Skarbrand, I think. I mean, Skarbrand could probably beat him, so I guess. And then I learned that he beat N'Kari in the lore. So I was like, okay, well, he beat Nakari, he has to be above Nakari. But here's why I wanted to rate him so low, and I ended up getting begrudgingly forced to put him as 2. But what holds Skarbrand back from being number 1 is in the end times, which is bad writing, fair. But in the end times, Malekith literally one-shots him in like 2 sentences. Skarbrand's leading an army, and Malekith is busy, and he's like riding around his black dragon. And when Malekith's own army starts to turn against itself because of Khorne's rage, he goes, oh, I need to do something. And he flies down and just, boop, hits him with Destroyer once, and Skarbrand dies. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty pathetic. That's a pretty bad way to go out, compared to Kugath, who's number 3. Kugath took Luin a lot longer to beat him. Now Malekith's probably stronger than Luin. I haven't thought about that yet, but it's like, okay. Still, Kugath put up much more of a fight. Skarbrand just got one-tapped in a sentence or 2. And then also in Thanquol's book, that one where he's making all the dwarves rampage, he dies to a random dwarf hero who's just there for that book when he walks under a statue of Grugni, I believe, and that dwarf hero blows off an arm from that statue, and the arm lands on him and crushes Skarbrand and kills him. So he has 2 pretty meh deaths in lore books, and only one of them is the end times that you can write off as being garbage. So I don't know, that kept him out of the number 1 spot, but looking at other sources of lore, it was pretty hard to debate that he'd be 3 or 4 on this list, in my opinion, because I mean, he beat Nakari. What more do you want from me here? And the number 1 spot on our list for the demons will be Be'lakor himself. Be'lakor is the main antagonist of a lot of different races' stories in the Warhammer universe. He constantly plagues men of the Empire, some witch hunters. I believe he hangs out in Mordheim, if I'm remembering the city right, so there's some stories about various Empire heroes going to deal with him there. He's just a problem. Be'lakor is a big old problem. He also bothers the Skaven a lot, bothers the High Elves. So, Be'lakor is just the Lord of Shadow and nonsense. An undivided demon, so he owes allegiance to no Chaos God. At one point, he got so mighty that he thought he could become one, and the other 4 Chaos Gods said, lol, no, and slapped him down and forced him to become a shadow of himself. But he refuses to die, despite their, desire for him to be such. So, being able to not die when the Chaos Gods say, hey, die, is pretty powerful. He also tries to attack the Oak of Ages in the end times, fails, then comes back later, frees Manfred von Karstein, and then gets bodied by a bunch of immortals incarnates working together. But it does take multiple incarnates working together to tie him down. And like I said, he is a just constant thorn in the side. Honestly, Be'lakor underwhelms me a little bit in some ways, but comparing him to the other greater demons, a lot of the greater demons have kind of meh ways that they go down. So as I was doing research for this list, it honestly made me think less of the demonic lords rather than think highly of them. So I guess Be'lakor wins by default. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of the demon lords are done pretty dirty in the lore I could find for how they get killed off power rankings wise. Because I feel like a lot of the lords have cool moments when they're not supposed to lose, but as soon as the author decides they need to lose, a lot of these lords get done bad, is what I'm trying to say. You might be like, well, there was one part where Nakari was sprinting through and like killing tons of people and no one could stand up to him. Yeah, but when he died, it was kind of like, all right, the plot says you need to die now, so I don't know, Tyrion like hits you. Anyway, that's shorthand, trying to talk about 10 different characters' stories all at the same time. So obviously there's examples of them being badass, but there's also a lot of examples of them being pretty pathetic because of power scaling and the end times and stuff, so it's hard for me to really take them too seriously. Be'lakor is the best of the demons, though, and he is a spooky, scary guy.
Roar. Subscribe, yes.